The Napoleonic era. This was a period of even more military upheaval. Napoleon Bonaparte, who had been promoted to general based on his ability, had taken over the military side of the country. After the 1799 coup, the consulate was introduced with him as the chairman, effectively leading to a dictatorship, and eventually Napoleon declaring himself emperor in 1804. During the 1800 to 1815 period of French military history, Napoleon changed the structure of the army. Divisions gave way to corps. These were 30,000 strong groups of men, including 3 infantry and 1 cavalry unit, with 46 artillery guns. This increased mobility and deadliness of the army. These corps were self-sustaining and self-defending independent armies who Napoleon controlled into decisive battles. This new tactic was the concentration of his armies at one point, the heart of the enemy's army. This would create an instant battle, therefore reducing the length of the fight and subsequently reducing the cost of supplying the army for lengthy wars. However, it also increased casualty rates, but due to the numerically superior French army, it did not decrease efficiency. Napoleon managed to move his 200,000 strong army 500 miles in 6 weeks, a feat unmatched by contemporary armies. This allowed for the success of the Battle of Ulm in 1805, in present-day Germany, because Napoleon was able to encircle the Austrian army and defeat them easily, only losing 2,000 troops compared to the 60,000 Austrians. In the same year, at the Battle of Austerlitz, the French army had 67,000 troops and the Austro-Russian army 86,000. The French army's increased mobility helped to win the war, with only 8,000 losses compared to 27,000 of her enemies. The French army during the war had become battle-hardened and was strongly led, as opposed to the Austro-Russian army, who had a split command and had only been allied for a few months. In 1806, Napoleon successfully defeated the Prussian army using the encirclement method, and occupied the territory. However, the French army were not always successful in warfare. The Battle of Trafalgar in 1805 was a successful victory for the British naval fleet, securing a blockade over France and her imports, and thus restricting Napoleon's supplies. This had little effect until the disastrous campaign into Russia in 1812, where France lost 400,000 out of 600,000 of her attacking force. However, the French defeat was due to various factors, most prominently the Russian army's Great Retreat tactic. Due to her size, Russia could allow for the loss of territory in order to stretch her enemy's supply line and tire her army. The Battle of Borodino triggered this movement. It started with the French 130,000 strong and the Russians 120,000, losing 30 to 35 and 39 to 45,000 respectively. Despite the Russians losing more, they could more easily supply reinforcements than the French due to the shorter distance to travel. However, the Russians knew that if they did not act quickly, then they would be overwhelmed by the battle-hardened French. Therefore, the Great Retreat began. They burned fields and villages as they retreated, preventing the French army from feeding off the land, causing many French troops to die of starvation and illness. The French army, directed by Napoleon, foolishly followed the Russian army all the way to Moscow, which the Russians had also burnt. Upon the arrival in Moscow of the French army, they were so tired and whittled down that the Russian army could easily push them all the way out again. This was the largest defeat of the period so far, and France would never again be the military superpower that it once was. In her weakened form, the French army was defeated at the Battle of Leipzig by the combined army of Russia, Austria and Prussia in 1813. France's remaining army of 200,000, still quite a formidable force, but now her morale destroyed, lost 73,000. The Allied force lost 54,000, and pushed France back to her pre-revolutionary borders. Artillery was heavily used in this battle, including the shelling of Paris. France's defeats continued, her most famous and last at Waterloo in 1815. For the sake of this segment, I shall refer to the British and Prussian forces as the Seventh Coalition, as the army also consisted of troops from the United Provinces, Hanover, Nassau and Brunswick. Britain had technically been at war for France for the past 15 years, and this tension had now culminated with this battle. Napoleon's army had been reduced to 72,000, and the coalition was at the time 68,000 strong. The battle commenced and was instantly one of attrition and land conquests. Napoleon was determined to secure several strategically important locations, including Hougoumont, a farm, which he failed to attain. The British army hid itself behind a ridge, moderately safe from the French artillery's smoothbore cannons, which could not penetrate the ground nor bounce over the ridge due to it having rained the day before. Napoleon launched wave after wave of cavalry and infantry to no avail. The coalition's square formation, with their pikes and bayonets, successfully prevented and even scared the French horses from advancing, thus effectively negating Napoleon's cavalry. The British forces managed to defend the area, but were unable to push forward and defeat the French troops until the arrival of Blücher and his Prussian forces. The combined 7th Coalition then defeated Napoleon at several key battles and successfully won the Battle of Waterloo. Napoleon was banished to the island of St. Helena, where he lived the rest of his life until his death in 1821, aged 51. Public opinion was very important during this period, especially in France. 7.5 million pamphlets and 100,000 Republican songbooks were issued around the country, emphasizing the importance of the nation and its military actions, rallying the public behind the war effort and maintaining a high morale in the workplace. After their defeat in 1806, Prussia copied the French idea of a general staff, a huge advantage which would prove its worth during the German Wars of Unification. Austria copied France's emphasis on nationalism and conscription, resulting in the victory against her at Aspin in 1809, although they lost at Wagram again in 1809. The only element that remained the same were the weapons. The rifle had been invented and slowly integrated into the French and British armies, however not widely. The predominant weapons were still the smoothbore musket with attachable bayonet and the cannon. Thank you for listening. Remember to thumbs up, comment and subscribe. Watch out for my next video on the Crimean War.